We've done the S23 Ultra, now it's the A54's turn. This is how to use every single camera mode on the Galaxy A54. Let's go. Hello everybody, welcome back to Tech with Benefits. Daniel here. Now we've done the Galaxy S23 Ultra and we've taken a look at how to use every single one of those camera modes. You can watch that video up here. But we also have other phones in the Samsung lineup to take a look at. So now it's the A54's turn to take a look at how to use every single one of its camera features. It's no secret, Samsung packs their cameras full of camera modes, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to need to know how to do. There's a lot of crossover between, so where I don't cover something in this video, be sure to go check out the Galaxy S23 one. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. But we're going to start somewhere, and we're going to break this video up into different sections. We'll start by looking off at the photo modes, and then go and take a look at the video stuff. Let's get started though, and look at the first photo mode. It's aptly named Photos. So in the photo mode of the camera, it's the first thing you notice when you launch the camera up. There's something I didn't mention in the last video. You can quick launch into the camera from any screen that you're on. All you need to do is double press the power button, and really quickly, no matter if it's locked, unlocked, whatever app you're in, and it'll go directly into the camera. When you do that, the first thing you're greeted with is the photo mode. And before we actually do anything in terms of taking the photos, let's jump into the settings and take a look at some of the settings that you could alter before you even take your photo. The first couple that I would recommend turning on, first one's already turned on by default, that's Scene Optimizer. It basically uses some artificial intelligence to understand the scene that the camera is pointing at and change the color science to suit. So whether it's landscape photography, but even more granular, whether it's at the beach, whether it's in a rainforest, it'll know to dial up or dial down certain tones to give you the most aesthetically pleasing photo. You can turn this off if it's not to your liking, but honestly, just leave it on, let it do its thing. Underneath that, there's something I 100% recommend turning on, and that is shot suggestions. Shot suggestions will just give you a basic guide on to where to position your camera in relation to the scene you're taking a photo of. Once you've got that turned on, the camera will actually process the surroundings for you and then tell you where to point. Once you've lined it up, you take the photo, you've got a really nice composed photo that you've shot. If we go a bit further down, there's some other settings that I probably wouldn't bother with. The high efficiency pictures setting is just if you want it to not use as much storage space. With the A54 and how it has expandable memory, I probably wouldn't worry about this because you can expand the storage using a micro SD card. You're not just limited to what's on the phone. But if you are a bit of a storage nut, that will just compress the files a little bit. It won't sacrifice quality, it just compresses it down a little bit more. It does make them a little bit more difficult to share, so just be mindful of that. Down from that as well, you have Auto HDR, and that's turned on by default. Again, don't touch that. You're much better off having that turned on. And then grid lines. This you can use in conjunction with shot suggestions. It just means you're going to be able to use the rule of thirds with photography, plus let the phone process the lines and the accuracy for you. But this is good to turn on if you're maybe taking video. When we get to that, you'll understand why. If we go into shooting methods, there's a couple of things in there that you can turn on and activate. You also have floating shutter button. The floating shutter button means if you turn that on, it will position a floating shutter button on the display, and then you can put that maybe where your thumb can reach it a little bit more easily. Something else you probably didn't know is that you can use the volume keys to take your photos and record your video, but you can reprogram those to do different things. You can make it be zooming in and out, or just actually changing the volume and not have anything to do with photos at all. Now that you've got those settings turned on, let's jump into the first mode, photos. Now, being that it's not a flagship, there's not going to be as much in here that you can do compared to the S23 or the Ultra. It's very simple and basic. You have your standard zoom range, your 0.5 ultra wide, your 1x main camera, and then your 2x all the way to 10x is going to be digital. You also have, though, within this, Samsung has brought its motion photo feature to the A series. So you turn motion photo on and it allows you to capture a short 2 to 3 second clip before your photo was taken that you can then go back to afterwards, save as a video, save as a GIF, or go and extract another frame from before the photo was taken that you might find to be more pleasing. This is not going to be as high quality as the final product. However, you can grab some good snaps from here, especially if someone's blinked or if someone's moved. It gives you that option. One thing that is often not spoken about with Samsung's camera mode is you can hold down the shutter button and it will start to record. And what you can do from there is you can then swipe it up and it will lock the video into place. So then you can focus on your zooming and keep recording video straight from the camera mode. It means you're not missing. The only thing it does do is it keeps it at the 4:3 aspect ratio or whatever aspect ratio you've set the phone to, and it records in that full HD resolution. So it's not the ideal video recording solution, but it's there as an option if you quickly want to take something. Something else the A54 has that's quite good is you can go into 50 megapixel mode. Now it's the same sensor size as the S23, the base and the Plus model, which I've compared those in a video up here, but it doesn't mean it's as good. So the A54's camera has an all pixel focus, so it's not dual pixel. So the 50 megapixel will work quite well. It captures quite a bit of detail. It's just not quite as detailed as S23. However, it's there. The file sizes are a little bit bigger, so be wary of that. But you do have that option to take a 50 megapixel photo with your A54. Now moving along and going into the next camera mode for photos, we have portrait. Portrait photography, as I've stated before, it's a very key battleground for smartphone makers. Samsung has put some attention into its portrait mode for S series, and a lot of that stuff has trickled down, albeit very sparingly, into the A series. The difference with the A series portrait mode compared to the S23 is that you have no option before the photo to preview any of your different background effects. You have the standard blur and you can control the strength, and that's it. Once you've taken the photo though, you can go back into the gallery and then you'll be able to see the different effects that you can load into it, and you can change them, change the strength. It has other different options, like it does have studio lighting. However, the studio lighting, again, it's like a watered down version where it doesn't quite give you the option to reposition where the lighting is coming from on their face. It's just, it will position it for you and you just adjust the brightness slider on the right hand side. But the thing with the portrait mode on the A54 is it doesn't have a night portrait and you can't use a 2x crop. You only have the 1x crop with the camera to take your portrait photos. So be it. Scrolling further along, you have Fun Mode. Fun Mode is a partnership with Snapchat that Samsung have incorporated different effects and lenses directly into the smartphone's camera app. Is it something we've asked for? No. Is it a bit of fun to use? Yes. However, I don't think you'll be finding yourself needing to bust this out too much. Samsung have targeted this phone in particular to your first smartphone buyers, people coming into the smartphone market for the first time, who they believe is your teenage market. More realistically, it's people potentially buying their first smartphone at the other end of life. Tired people, parents who just need an affordable phone that they don't necessarily mind getting broken because they're giving their phone to the kids. To be honest, this is probably a really good feature for them because it means they'll be able to hand their phone to their kids, set them up with Fun Mode, and let them have fun. But as you can see, you've got the different lenses and effects, and Samsung do rotate these quite frequently. It's not just the selfie camera, it does also work with the rear camera. So quite a bit of fun to be had with Fun Mode. Then we go into the More tab, and in here is where you'll find the rest of the photography features. Now, whichever ones of these you use, feel free to bring them and drag them down into the bottom. It just means you'll have access to them a lot easier, especially if you use them quite frequently. We're going to start with the first one that we see when we slide over there, and that's Pro Mode. The Pro Mode with the A54, again, it's more of a basic Pro Mode. It doesn't give you all of the same levels of control that the S23 series does. You still do get down the bottom quite a few options. You've got the ISO, you've got the shutter speed, you've got the exposure value, and then you've got your manual focus. So that's really the main ones that you might tinker with anyway. The A54, however, does not save in RAW. So your Pro mode is purely just to control your settings. There is no option to save a RAW copy in Pro mode with the A54. Moving along, when it comes to photography, you have night mode. Night mode is, again, it's a watered down version of night mode from the flagship. So it still will work on the two rear cameras that are there, the ultra wide and the main. It does give you the 2x option, but that's just digital zoom. But it doesn't work the same. Where the S23 will give you an on-screen guide to position the photo still, and it'll also give you a countdown timer into how long it'll take to process or how long it'll capture frames for. The A54 literally just, you have to hold it still and then hope it knows what it's doing. It'll then process and save the image, and then you go back and you see what the image was. That's really it. There's nothing more to night mode on the A54 compared to what the S23 can do. You've got your standard food mode, and food mode here is very similar to the S23. The only difference is you don't get access to the 3x camera in food mode than what you do on the S23. But I'm not going to go through too much food mode with the A54. If you want to know a bit more about it, go watch the S23 video. Pretty much covers it. Then we have panorama. And I think the same can sort of be said for panorama. You get both the ultra wide and the 1x camera to take panoramas with. And it's very much along the same lines as the S23. The only difference is the sensors you're taking photos with aren't quite as comparable to what the S23 offers. But again, I will point you in the direction of the S23 video if you want to know a little bit more about how to use panorama in a little bit more detail. The last proper photo mode on the A54 that's actually exclusive for the A54 is macro. Macro photography has become a bit of a niche that a lot of people like to have some fun with. So the A54 has a macro mode and a dedicated macro camera. Now it's a 5 megapixel camera, so it's not going to be awfully sharp. However, its advantage is it has a really close minimum focusing distance. So when you go into macro mode, it tells you to go 3 to 5 centimeters away from your subject, and then you go all the way in with that, and it'll bring into focus the thing you want to take a photo of. It's really cool for flowers or just miniature sort of toys. And you go all the way in, you can really see detail, and because of the processing as well, it picks up the little bits of detail and shows you a really, really nice clean image. It does give a little bit of background blur, a little bit of a bokeh effect in the background too. And look, these aren't photos you're probably likely to do much with. It's just a bit of fun to have on your camera. And again, it sort of speaks to what Samsung are trying to do with the A54, and that's make a nice, fun phone to use. And that's what this gives you. Now, as we start to blend into video mode, there's one thing that the A series, again, shares with S23, and that's single take. Single take is my favorite feature that Samsung make. I will forever be using single take to take photos of my children. It's just hands down the best feature around. And again, you can jump up to my dedicated single take video. I made one on how best to use it. But with the A54, it's not quite as comprehensive as the S23. You only get 10 seconds of footage being captured. There is no option to extend it a further 5. And the photos and videos that it processes aren't quite as intelligent as what the S23 series are. It takes way quicker to spit out its results. Whereas the S23, because it is searching and processing using a bit more of a complex AI algorithm, takes that little bit longer to give you your results. Whereas the A54, it's just basically giving you certain types of images. It's not necessarily looking for what the S23 looks for. And it only spits out up to 6 versus 8 on the S23. Now we get into video. Video with the A54, it's very stunted. If we go directly into the video mode, you'll notice that it's not quite as comprehensive as the S23. And that starts with the zoom capabilities. Again, you've got your ultra wide, but what I really notice with the ultra wide here is when you do zoom out during a video, it's not a smooth transition. It has to do that janky blurred animation, and you do miss a certain amount of the footage when you do it. You also have a much more restricted resolution access. It starts with HD 30, you go up to full HD 60, and then you have 4K 30. The 4K 30 doesn't allow for stabilization. So whilst the S23, it has stabilization pretty much all the way up to 8K, a lot of that's down to the sensor being a lot more stabilized. But the video digital image stabilization turns off on 4K 30 on the A54. So your best option to shoot video here, if you want it to be stable, is either full HD 30 or full HD 60. There's not much more really that you'd want to be able to do. I wouldn't bother going all the way up to 4K 30. Unless you have a tripod, there's no reason to use 4K 30. There's two other things though that they have brought down from the S23 on the A54. They've been there for a while, but again, they're always watered down versions. The first is Super Steady. So the Super Steady option on the A54 will crop the ultra wide sensor heavily in and basically use some algorithmic whiz to keep the footage a little bit stable. The problem is it's a very weak sensor on the ultra wide camera on the A54, so you really would want perfect outdoor lighting conditions for it to look good, and it is limited to full HD 30 frames per second. The S23 has bumped up Super Steady to Quad HD 60, so you've got way better resolution and frame rate on offer. The A54, you're limited to that full HD 30. But in the right scenario, you get super smooth footage. What they've also added is auto framing. The auto framing, again, uses the ultra wide camera, and it just will zoom in and out depending on what's happening in the frame. Whereas the S23, I think, can do up to 10 people, the A54 is limited to up to 6. So look, it's still quite handy, but the best use case for this is on a tripod. Absolutely. You will not want to use this handheld. Whilst it is possible, it can do it, your best use will be on a tripod. If we dive into the settings for the video mode, you'll notice there's a couple that you can turn on here for video. First being high efficiency videos. This saves it in that HEVC format, high efficiency video codec. Again, like the S23, use this if you're conscious of storage space and you record a lot of video, but just be wary. This will not be compatible to play on a lot of other devices. I know myself personally, I've got a Windows laptop. I needed to download VLC Player to actually make it work. So just be conscious that that is what you might need to do if you use this codec. There is the video stabilization, but again, you'll need to have the right resolution turned on, otherwise you can't activate it. Grid lines for video are what really makes a lot of sense, because if you want to make your video look straight, have these turned on. So many videos I watch are so wonky, the horizon line isn't even, and it just makes some of the videos unwatchable. So just make sure you've got the grid lines on. It'll be a massive help to shooting your video. Let's go into the More tab now and take a look at some of the video features that are in there. The one I'll start with is Pro Video. So like the S23, there is a Pro Video mode. However, this is an even more watered down version of a Pro mode compared to photos. In this one, you have all the resolutions that you can play with that the phone is capable of. No 24 frames per second options, no 8K, of course. But also there's no audio options. Where with the S23, you can add in an external microphone and tinker with the decibel levels and the control, you don't have that here. You simply have to rely on the microphones on board and whatever the phone thinks is appropriate for audio. The next ones on board here are to do with slow motion, so I'll group the two of them together. Normal slow motion, you just record and it'll slow down a certain part of the video where it thinks there's been action. With normal slow motion, you can go in and edit which parts of the video are slow because it's recording at a constant frame rate and you just have to edit that. Super slow motion is different. You press the record button and it'll slow it down to 960 frames per second as opposed to 240. The S23 will have an auto detect motion square. A54 doesn't have that. So you have to pretty much rely on your timing to take the super slow-mo video and then hope that whatever you're doing, it gets captured in the right moment. But then it'll slow that part down and give you your super slow-mo output. And then the last video mode is hyperlapse. Now I spoke a little bit about hyperlapse in the S23 one as well, but I'll mention it here too because the A54 actually has brought the same features down from the S23. Where the S23 allows you to tinker with the resolution, you can go all the way up to full 4K. The A54 doesn't allow that. It's just full HD only. You can have all of the different options when it comes to hyperlapse, all the different speeds. It will tell you what those speeds are good for, like the S23 one does. And it even brought in the 300 times speed that is great for the movement of the night sky, and even included the star trails button in the bottom right corner. You will need a tripod for this specific feature, but I think it's great that they've allowed this phone to have those features. So kudos to Samsung for seeing that. That's important, and adding a bit of fun and flair to a mid-range camera system. Last but not least, the selfie camera. Selfie cameras on phones are often forgotten about. I think some of your bigger brands do it really well, where they put a lot of emphasis on a good selfie camera. Samsung's definitely someone who tries to put emphasis on a selfie camera. With photos, you've got the 32 megapixel selfie option up at the top. That will allow you to take higher resolution selfies. Doesn't mean higher quality, but you've also got portrait mode from the front as well, and it works exactly the same as what the rear one does. The only difference here is you've got two different crop levels. You have if there's just one person in the frame, or the button to widen out to if there's more than one. So the camera can also auto detect that there's more people and widen it itself. With video from the front, you've also got all the same resolutions, so no stress. You can film 4K 30 from the front of the A54. I spoke quite a bit about the palm selfie and voice capture in the S23 video. That's also present here with the A54. So go ahead and turn those on and have some fun. But that is it from the A54 and its camera modes. There's a lot here. It's a big video, so make sure you save it. If it's too much, come back, watch it again, and make sure you like and subscribe as well off the back of this. Really want to build a big community of people to learn how to use their phones better. That's what I'm about. This video is another step towards that. So like, subscribe, turn on that bell icon, and make sure as well, between this video and my next, come hang out with me on Twitter and Instagram. Handles are below. But that's it for this week. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Yoo!